All right, everybody. Page number 3. All my decision beings, especially those enemies that hate me, obstruct those who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. And swiftly I establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. All my decision beings, especially those enemies who hate me, obstruct those who harm me, and those who create obstacles on my path to liberation and omniscience, may they experience happiness and be separated from suffering. And swiftly I would establish them in the state of unsurpassed, perfect, complete, and precious Buddhahood. Dang la dang borje pedram no parje pegeng. Sarva dang tam shem kin pe bardu sho parje patam kechi soje bem man. Manam kadanyam pesen shen sam she de wazat. Dognya dam drenur dame payam dam parzo pe changshu rainbow sheto parjam. Thus, until I achieve enlightenment, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. Until death, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. From now until this time tomorrow, I perform virtuous deeds with body, speech, and mind. De che do sang ma ge ke bar du sang na ye som ge wa la kon ma che bar du long na ye som ge wa la kon do de ring ne som te ni ma sang da sam gi bar du long na ye som ge wa la kon. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Idams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sanghas. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakis, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. We take refuge in the kind root Lama and lineage Lamas. We take refuge in the deities of the mandalas of the Idams. We take refuge in all the exalted Buddhas. We take refuge in the perfect Dharma. We take refuge in the excellent order of the Sangha. We take refuge in all the noble Dakas, Dakini, and Dharma guardians, possessors of the eye of wisdom. Drichen zawadang yubarje pek tapen namadam panam lakyam sushi om. Edam Yogorgila Sognam La Gabzo Om Sangye Jonden Denam La Gabzo Om Dambe Jonam La Gabzo Om Bagpe Yedonam La Gabzo Om Pao Kadro Jokin Song Me Song Yen Sheki Chendang Yepa until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Until I attain the heart of enlightenment, I take refuge in all the Buddhas. I take refuge in the Dharma, and likewise in the assembly of the Bodhisattvas. As the previous Buddhas embraced the enlightened mind and progressed on the Bodhisattva's path, I too, for the benefit of all sentient beings, give birth to bodhicitta and apply myself to accomplish the stages of the path. Changshubnye bodhishi ba sangye namla gyabzuje. Shodong Jang Shub Zenpai Zogla Yang De Shin Yam Su Shin Jeta Nong Ye De Shin Ki Chub Shub Tu Nye Ki Padam Chub Shub Sim Pe La Palam De Dog Rim Shin Ne Patai De Shin Dro Lam Pen Don Dum Chub Shub Sim Ni Ki Gi Sing De Shin Duni La Palam Rimba Shindu Lamparje. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha must excellent. I take refuge until alignment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may I attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. In the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha must exist. I take refuge until alignment is reached. By the merit of generosity and other good deeds, may attain Buddhahood for the sake of all sentient beings. Sangye Jondang Zogi Jonam La Shakshu Baradu Dangye Gyabzo She Dagye Jing Zongye Pe Sonam Ke Jola Benjir Sangye Drubar Shog. May all my sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May the rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. May all my sentient beings, boundless as the sky, have happiness and the cause of happiness. May they be liberated from suffering and the cause of suffering. May they never be separated from the happiness that is free from sorrow. May the rest in equanimity, free from attachment and aversion. Anam kadanyam pesem chantam she dewa dang deweji dang den par yu chi dung na ye yu dang dra war yu chi dung na me pe dewa dang mi dra war yu chi Nyering Zhang Dan Ni Lang Dra Wei Dang Nyam La Nye Bar Yu Ching. I bow down respectfully with my body, speech, and faithful mind to all Tathagatas in the 10 directions, those who have already reached the Tathagata state, those who are reaching it at present, and those Tathagatas still to come. Through the power of Samantamada's prayers, may all Buddhas manifest vividly in my mind. I prostrate to them, multiplying my body as many times as there are atoms on earth. In each atom, I visualize as many Buddhas as there are atoms, surrounded by countless bodhisattvas. Thus, all space is filled with Buddhas and bodhisattvas. I praise all Buddhas through magnificent chanting, expressing the great ocean of their excellent qualities. To all Buddhas, I make offerings of various pure flowers, flower garlands of music, anointing oils, magnificent light, and fragrant incense. I make offerings to them of fine garments, perfume, and potpourri, piled high as Mount Meru, and arranged in the most beautiful way. I visualize the highest and most extensive offerings, and offer them with great faith to all Buddhas. I prostrate to the Buddhas and make offerings to them, following the deeds of the great Bodhisattva Samantabhadra. I confess to you, Buddhas, whatever negative actions I have committed due to the power of anger, desire, and ignorance, I rejoice in the merit of all the Buddhas in the 10 directions, of the great Bodhisattvas and Pratika Buddhas, those who have attained arhatship, those who have entered the path of arhatship, and all other beings. I request to all great protectors and Buddhas to turn the highest will of Dharma as the light dispelling the darkness of beings in the 10 directions and leading them gradually to the enlightened state. I supplicate those Buddhas intending to pass into Paranirvana to live long, for as many eons as there are atoms on the earth, in order to benefit all beings. Whatever merit I've gathered through prostrations, offerings, confessions, rejoicing, beseeching, and praying for the sake of enlightenment of all the human beings, all this I dedicate. The ground is sprinkled with scented water and strewn with flowers. It is adorned with Meru, the supreme mountain, the 4 continents, the sun, and the moon. As the Buddha filled, I offer it. May all sentient beings attain the happiness of the Buddha filled. To the lamas who possess the 3 kayas, I offer the outer, inner, and secret offerings. With my body, wealth, and all that is visible, please grant me the supreme realization, enlightenment. Whatever merit I gather through prostrations, offers, confessions, rejoicing, beseeching, and praying for the sake of the enlightenment of all sentient beings, all this I dedicate. Om Guru Ratamandala Pusamega Samudra Saparana Samaya. Saji Peju Me Dogdam Rida Mingji Nide Gembadi Sangye Shingla Migde Puwaye Drogon Nam Zanji Duke Washo Uzum Yazogla Mezonam La Shinang Zanzon Deji Ninja Show Daglu Logjo Nam si yojelam lame Chongyin Nedru Zadu Sol Chazoda Wadang Chojing Shakpadang Jesu Ilang Kushi Solwa Ye Yewam Chengzin Daijin Sangpam Tam Jesu Pe Chanju Chere Go Om Guru Radhamandala Pusamega Samudra Zaparana Samaya. Unequal refuge, ornament of the world, your fame pervades the 3,000 worlds. You are the victor, Vajradhara, without a doubt. I bow at the feet of the Father, Chintam Sangha. Continually, I think no one but you. Compassionate one, grant your blessing, dispel the darkness that surrounds my heart. Please bless me so that I can realize the untold nature of mine. Kyabdre, Dren, Jida Mezame, Yen, Dragin Pem, Don Som Yola Yam, Some Yawa Jejang, Faje Teng Jom Pesala Dum, Dudak Som Ya Sam Ye, John Leme, Jing Ye Log Jing. Tu Jen, Ningi Montpasal Ne Yang, Sendro Dodo, Tomba Jiji Lom. Please turn the wheel of Dharma of the two vehicles and their combination according to the disposition and likewise the mental capacities of sentient beings. Senjin Yang Ki Zambadam, Loi Jeda Jedawa, Jeju Mong.
Okay, thank you very much, Adrian.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions? I know we always ask this because this is, our time to be able to ask questions and talk about things. So that's what, these sessions are about. So new things come up all the time, I know. So feel free to ask away.
Lance, when Adrian was doing the prayers, he was transitioning his hands. What was, and I apologize, I feel completely ignorant and ask, yeah, what are you doing? What is that representing?
It's a mandala offering.
Okay.
So we visualize the mandala. So it's a mudra that we are doing. So I can try and explain this to you. So we take our two hands and we take our two ring fingers, and the two ring fingers come together. The backs of the fingers come together. Can you see my fingers sticking up like this?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you interlock your two little fingers.
Okay.
Your two little fingers are interlocked. And
there, go from this position.
Adrian, that looked really easy.
Oh, you want me to explain it to you?
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So you two ring fingers, and you take your two little fingers, and they're interlocked with each other. Can you see they're locking like that?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you take your right hand middle finger, and it interlocks with your left hand index finger.
Okay.
And then your left hand middle finger interlocks with your right hand index finger. And then your two thumbs pull back on the two little fingers. So what you've got, so you can see your two ring fingers are sticking up like this. And what you've established here are the four continents. We talk about that there are four continents, and Mount Meru is in the center. Mount Meru is our two ring fingers, symbolizes our two ring fingers.
Okay.
So it is a mindfulness part of the practice to do this mudra. So when we do the mandala offering that's in the book, this is what we are doing. And then we do the dissolution at the end. Okay. So it takes a little practice to do it, to get it to be able to do it quickly and smoothly and so on. But I don't know if we've got a picture of it online, but we might have something to show you that. But if you can follow those instructions, that's what it is. Yeah, there we go. So when we,
Okay.
one of the next things we're going to get into after we finish the deity yoga that we're doing on Friday nights, we're going to do the introduction to the nundro. And in the introduction to the nundro, these things are very important things that we do during that time. So we'll learn a little bit more ritual stuff at that time.
Thank
I'll show you.
you.
I'll show you there. There's another way that I do it. If you do, you want to spend a couple of seconds to explain?
Go ahead.
So usually the way that I do it, I just cross my fingers like this, interlace them,
Mm-hmm.
just like that. And then with this thumb, you catch the pinky on the opposite hand. With
Okay.
this thumb,
Mm-hmm.
just holding it up like that, right? And then with the thumb, you catch the pinky on the other side. The two ring fingers come up, right? And then with the pointing fingers from this hand, from the right hand, you catch the pointing finger from the opposite hand. And then with the middle finger, you catch the middle finger from the other side, okay?
So is the essential function is there's 4 connections?
Yes.
Well,
the-
we're showing the 4 continents
Okay.
and Mount Meru.
Okay.
So
Through the index or the ring fingers coming
the
up.
ring fingers mean Mount Meru. But like I said, right now, it may not mean a whole lot, until we can go into and talk about the, the symbology of that, what the practice does, and we do that a little bit later.
Thank you both. I'll look into that. Thank you both.
Okay.
Thanks, Adrian.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Adrian. All right, so let's get into what our talk is on tonight. So we've been talking about liberation is what the goal of all this is. This is what we're trying to do, how to be liberated, how it is to become what we might call enlightened, how it is to recognize our Buddha nature, what Buddha is, what that represents. So in the first chapter of the Jewel Ornament of Liberation, we talked about the primal cause, the cause of this liberation, of wanting to be this liberation, is that we have this sense of freedom within ourselves, and we really want to be the embodiment of that freedom. So this is the yearning that we like to have, that we want to have. And then the second cause is the contributory cause of the spiritual master, the spiritual friend, the teacher, who is there to help us along. So this help comes from the Buddha, the Buddha as the teacher, and all the lamas, all the teachers throughout all the past 2,600 years are all emanations of that teacher, of that, and we have that within ourselves too. And we find that we recognize the Lama within ourselves, or the Guru within ourselves, and we begin to learn from our own wisdom, that this wisdom is indestructible wisdom, that is the same wisdom that is the wisdom of this true nature. In order to recognize that, we have to cut through all the junk that we've layered on top of, our true nature, that has been the stuff that we've been following all our lifetime, that is full of errors and confusion and habitual tendencies, misconceptions, emotions, all these things. So we realize that we have this precious human life. This is our working basis. How do we become liberated? What is it that allows us to be liberated? And when we look at all of phenomenal nature, and we see that it's human beings have that ability. Precious human beings have that ability. The animals don't have it. Insects don't have it. And then when we learn about the 6 realms of what it is to be a human being, the hell realms and the animal realm, hungry ghost realm and the jealous God realm and the God realms, we realize that they can't have that. It requires a human being, a precious human being, to be able to realize their true nature. So we're building up to being able to get to that point, and we're going to be talking about the 6 realms in the next week or the following week. Very soon we're getting to that point. So what we're learning now is the method of the way in which the teacher, the Lama, is conveying to us what it is that has been blocking us up, what it is that is confusing us, what it is that we've been following and not being able to recognize this true nature that we have within ourselves. So what we realize, what the teacher is trying to point out to us, is that we have attachments, and we have attachments to this life. We have attachment to this life's activities. We have attachments to the pleasures of this life. We have attachment to peace. And we have attachment of not understanding by the way in which this enlightenment, this liberation is reached. We think that we have the solutions within ourselves to be able to be happy and to be satisfied. And it's true to a point, but does it always work? Is it always making us happy, or there are certain conditions that can happen to us that we recognize, that we feel the suffering, our emotions rise up and so on. So we have to let go of those emotions to get to our true nature, to be able to realize that. So this is part of the instruction of the method. So these 4 obstacles are the 4 obstacles to the attainment of Buddhahood. So I'm looking at this outline that I sent you. So you can see being attached to life's activities, the pleasures of samsara, peace, and not knowing the method for which enlightenment is achieved. So then we say, well, how are these dispelled? How do we overcome these attachments? So we do this through the spiritual master's instruction. So the essence of these instructions come from Shakyamuni Buddha, come from the historical Buddha. It's all part of the Dharma teachings that the Buddha discovered and enumerated, articulated. He created this for our benefit in order that he could convey to us what it is that's making us suffering and what it is that are the antidotes to those poisons that are creating the suffering.
Lance, I have a question. What does it mean to be attached to peace?
If we have peace, then the opposite of peace is some kind of war, some kind of conflict. And in our lifetime, it's quite possible and more likely that we're going to see conflict than we're going to see true peace. But we get attached to the idea of peace, that I can have peace in this lifetime. And not only that, we have the secret that all beings can have this peace.
Is it internal or external peace?
Well, it's both. We look at it in both ways. You know, from one point of view, we're looking at it for our own peace. From another point of view, we're looking at it, peace, I can't have peace until everybody else has peace, a true lasting peace. So we have to look at what we call are the 2 truths. So we're going to talk about this more later on, but now that we're talking about it, I'll elaborate a little bit. That there is this phenomenal nature that we have that is full of all this confusion, all this suffering, all these dualisms. Peace and suffering, or peace and conflict, will be one of those dualisms. within us, we can recognize that there is a peace, that there is an indestructible bodhicitta, an indestructible loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And we can call that, we can look at that as being a peace. But what we're talking about right now is the attachment to the peace of the relative, the peace that everybody, that there would be peace on earth, everybody will be happy.
But if you wish for all sentient beings to have their suffering removed, isn't that wishing for peace?
Absolute peace, yes. The peace that is within themselves, and thereby manifest peace for all beings. But the reality of that, this is samsara. This is the ocean of suffering. Is this going to happen? We look at the cosmos. We look out in the galaxies and the planets and all these things are out there. It's a very chaotic place. It is full of destruction. And our life is full of that. We look at the observation, look at history in our life, and we see all these calamities that come before us, the sicknesses, the pestilence that we're going through right now, famine that maybe we haven't experienced, but that could be something that could happen. The wars that we have gone through. This is the reality of samsara. This is what samsara is. Now, we can transcend our suffering from that by not becoming attached to it. And that's what we're trying to learn. And through that, we learn this inner indestructible peace. That's when we learn this. But it's not an attachment that we have to that. It becomes our reality. It becomes our embodiment. We just naturally are peaceful. And we can't be disturbed from it. It can't be interrupted. But any peace that we get right now is a relative peace, and it can be easily upset. You can get a phone call that's going to upset you. You can turn the television on, it's going to upset you. Is that correct? Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think kind of, well, because then, I'm thinking, well, isn't the desire to go down this path being attached to that peace, right? Because, it's a bit, trying to keep those two together. The desire to do better is still an attachment to that desire.
That's right. That's right. It's still an attachment.
And so I think like what you're saying is kind of like, maybe like lowercase p versus capital P. Like there's the small kind of fleeting piece, which we try, we get attached to, but not the capital P piece, which we haven't reached yet.
And the capital P is perfectly natural. And that's the state of liberation. That's the state of enlightenment.
Okay, I get it. Thank you.
Okay. All right, so it's a really good question. Thank you very much. I hope everybody is clear on the point. Okay. So how do these four obstacles get dispelled? So it says here that it's the spiritual master's instruction on the meditation on impermanence, which is what we're going to talk about tonight, chapter 4, and the meditation on the faults of samsara, which the faults of samsara is all this suffering, all this confusion, all these things that are changing. If you remember, we talked about the 8 worldly concerns, the 8 worldly dharmas. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago. So to be able to transcend those faults of samsara, and then to recognize the cause and result of our actions, of our karma. So we're going to look at that in the next couple of weeks coming up. And then there's the meditation on loving kindness and compassion, which is chapter 7. We're going to look at that. So these chapters, this chapter that we're talking about now, chapters 5 and 6 and chapter 7, are all talking about the method of how to be able to recognize and overcome the things that we are holding on to, or the things that we have aversions to. The things that we are holding on to are our desires. The things that we are pushing away, the things that we have aversion to, are our hatreds, our angers, and so on. And we can grasp either one of those. We can hold on to the things that we want to have. We can hold on to the things we hate. So we have to recognize these in very, very clear, simple terms to be able to recognize them. So that's what this method is all about. So the attachment to this life is impermanence. If we recognize that this life is temporary, you know, it's hard for us to accept that. We, especially as we're young, we think we're going to live forever, that we're indestructible. But as we go through life and we begin to see the different frailties that we're subject to, illnesses, injuries, conflicts of one type or another, the emotions, all these things begin to accumulate in our lifetimes. And the further and further we get away from the reality of our natural peace, that natural big capital peace. We're born with that peace, or at least we're born with being close to it. But as an infant, that is disrupted when we have to have our food, and we need somebody to get our food for us when we're wet, and we need somebody to clean us, or we're cold or hot, we need somebody to change our clothes for us. And our method of being able to let them know that we're uncomfortable is our crying out and so on. But there are other times when, you know, there's this peacefulness, the baby's peacefulness. So the older we get, the more complex all those things, all those interruptions become. But we have that peace within ourselves, and it's a matter of getting back to that peace, removing all these things. So through this, recognizing the impermanence of things, the only thing that we can count on is the impermanence. So that becomes a liberation unto itself that tells us, you know, everything that we try and hold on to, everything, every thought, every emotion, every hatred that we have is all just temporary stuff. Why are we clinging to it? Why are we trying to grasp these things? We don't need these things. They're just compounded things that we've contrived ourselves. We need to be able to get to our true nature, which is just very peaceful and serene. And it is illustrated, is typified, characterized by the Buddha sitting in meditation position. In that position, it appears that the Buddha is perfectly serene, perfectly at peace. And we have that ability, we have that within ourselves, we have that potential. So we're working through the method to be able to sustain that and make that our natural state of being. So to meditate on impermanence becomes the element here. We have to identify it. We have to, through our intellect, we have to understand the causes of our life and all these changes that are happening. We need to see what all the interruptions are. We need to be able to contemplate all these things and put all this together in an organized way within our intellectual mind. And then we find that we begin to just rest with that. We begin, and what happens is we begin to become the embodiment of that awareness, and we no longer have to think about it all the time, that it just rises up all by itself. This peacefulness just arises up out of that, out of the contemplation. And this is the meditation. This is the true meditation that rises up by itself. So there's examples here to say, how do we attain this meditation? What is this meditation? What is this impermanence? So first it says the impermanence of the outer world, the stuff that is, outside of our internal self. So we look at fire, and fire leaves an ash residue until that residue is completely destroyed. So the impermanence of things that can be consumed by fire and leaves this ash. So there still is something there. That ash is still the remains of what it was that was consumed. Then with water, there's no sediment absorbs like salt water. So what that means is that the water has a cohesive quality about it, and it's holding that stuff that it seems to wash away. If we take water, and if we could look at it underneath a microscope or something, we'll see that it's just not water molecules, that there's all kinds of other stuff that is in that water, all kinds of living stuff and all kinds of inanimate stuff that is in that water. It's a cohesion of all this. But it appears that it is pure water. It appears that it is indestructible, that it is permanent. So water is another example of this impermanence. Wind blows away dust particles. So if the water dries out and those particles that are within the water, then they're left in a pile wherever that drop of water was. Now the wind can come, and the wind can blow those particles away. If the fire has consumed things and then the fire leaves the ash, then the wind comes along and that ash can be blown away. But now this ash now becomes these particles now become part of the atmosphere, part of this wind that is invisible to us. But if we can capture it, we can put it in some kind of a vial, and we can look at it looking at it through light passing through it, we can see that there's all kinds of particles in this atmosphere. Sometimes the sunshine, when the sun's going down at a certain time of the day and is shining through the window, and you see all these particles in the room, in the air, that were invisible to us until these conditions were there that we could see this. So the atmosphere is full of all these things. It's full of atoms. The atmosphere is a gas, and it's got all this atomic structure in there. So we're looking at the physicality of these things that we seem to think that are permanent, but they're all impermanent. They're all moving around and so on. So now it says it's the self-extinguishing that dissolves with sentient beings. So now we're looking at ourselves, and we're looking at that is compounded emptiness does not exist. It's our consciousness of being aware of all these things. That it is compounded emptiness does not exist. So now we look at all these things. We look at all these particles. We look at all this dust. We look at the wind. We look at all these things that we've been talking about that are external. And we see that these are all made up of composite things. None of these things exist on their own. They're not inherent. They're compounded. So we say that they are empty of their own nature, empty of their own, of their true nature. Everything is compounded. Everything is built up. We may look at the periodic table in science and look at the elements and so on and say, okay, this element of say nickel, the metal nickel, well, this is pure nickel. But then as we look into the nickel, we find that there's all these atomic things that are made up of these atoms and these electrons and so on. There's the nickel. And if we look down deeper, we look at the muons and the bosons and all the stuff that is subatomic particles and so on. So we see that all these things, even the pure elements, are made up of compounds. So we begin to be conscious of this. We begin to become aware of this. So this self-extinguishing dissolves with sentient beings. In other words, we get to recognize this. We begin to understand this. So that's the gross permanence of the outer world. Now, the meditation on the subtle impermanence of the outer world is looking at things like the four seasons, to be able to see that things are all changing. We're identifying all these things that are impermanent. All these things, the seasons are changing around us. We can see that very easily. We can see the rising and the setting of the sun and the moon. We can see these cycles that are going around. We can see that each moment dissolves into another moment. We see that time is this relative nature, this relative concept that we use to be able to use to understand where we are now, where we were in the past, and where we'll be in the future. But all this is contrived, all this is fabricated. All this is impermanent. It's not permanent. It is not absolute. It is relative. It is all part of the relative nature. Our consciousness is now catching up with this. Our consciousness is becoming aware of this. This again is the self-extinguishing of all this permanence, that what we think is permanence dissolves within the human being. We're recognizing this. We're the only ones who can recognize this. The gods don't recognize this. And we'll talk about this later on, I know. The jealous gods don't recognize this. The hungry ghosts don't recognize this. The hell beings don't recognize this. And the animals don't recognize this. It takes a human being to recognize these aspects of what this samsara, of what this phenomenal nature is. So now we have to look at the impermanence on the inner sentient being within ourselves, the internal. So we look at the impermanence of others, and we look at the impermanence of oneself. So in others, we look at what's called the three worlds. Now this is getting a little more esoteric stuff here. So the three worlds are that we are part now of this desire world. Desire world. This everything that we are doing is manifested through attachments, through desires. We want these things, we want this life, we want this body. We made it so that we were born again. All the things that we have here, all is the result of this grasping, this desire. So we say we have this desire body and this form body. This phenomenal nature is all form, all these appearances, appearance forms. They're all contrived, but they're forms nevertheless. And then there is this world, there is this mindfulness of being desireless, but still being form. Our thoughts can be form, can be desireless. We can elevate ourselves to a point that we remove ourselves, that we cut ourselves off from attachments. But at the same time, we still are thinking in terms of forms. Our thoughts are made up of images and made up of different kinds of characterizations and symbols and so on. So this is the form desireless world, within our intellect, within our mind, within our brain. And again, you know, animals and the other beings, they don't recognize this. They don't see this. It takes a precious human being to be able to recognize this, who is taking the time to be able to focus one pointedly through the intervention of the contributory master, through the teacher, to help us to point these things out. Some of us may have the wherewithal, may have had all the past lives, to be able to recognize some of this on our own. There are genius, what we call genius, people who recognize things that other people don't recognize. There is that possibility. But for most of us, you know, we're ordinary beings. And these things will not come to us automatically. We have to go through these cycles over and over again of cause and effect, of conditions, and seeing how these things come together for us all of a sudden to make some kind of a recognition of all this happening and so on. But a teacher can appear, and a teacher can bring this to our awareness very quickly. So this form realm, this desireless form realm, is the realm of the mind, but it's of the thinking mind, of the lower mind, of the little mind, our intellect. And then there's the world called the formless realm and desireless realm. And now this realm, or this world now, is the spiritual, is what we have within ourselves, and we have glimpses of it from time to time. Whether or not we're intending to have those glimpses, these things may come to us. We may be in a particular set of circumstances where we're perfectly relaxed and our brain is not churning out all these images and so on. Our body is completely relaxed, and we'll have this awareness of this inner peace, of this inner connectedness, this inner spirituality. We may not even have a word for it, or it may be the word of love, that all of a sudden, you know, we have this epiphany, something happens like this. So this is the formless, the desireless realm that we have within ourselves, that is there. And what we're trying to do is to make ourselves become the embodiment of the exaltation of that, the living embodiment of that freedom, of that spirituality. We can do it within the form realm of the brain, and we can do it within the desire realm of ordinary human being. But now it has a whole new connotation to it. It has a whole new activity to it. And it has a whole set of criteria in which it operates. And now there's no attachment to it. There's no aversion to it. There's no emotion to it. We can still, as a human being, we can become enlightened as a human being. We don't have to die to have this, you know, phantasmal, you know, experience. We can have these experiences as human beings, and we have them as glimpses. These glimpses may not be stable. They may be gone as fast as they come. But once we have a glimpse, once we recognize it, we see the possibilities. We see this inner reality. We see this true nature that we all have within ourselves. And then we can, if we're motivated, if we have that, the aspiration, now we can cultivate that so that becomes our normal way of living, our natural way of living. And then we become more and more realized human beings. We become bodhisattvas on the path to become Buddhas. And maybe we become Buddhas in a lifetime, in this lifetime, or in the next lifetime, or something like that. Once we make these progressions, we don't have to go backward if we maintain our virtue, if we maintain our good work, if we maintain our purity, and we don't let all these contaminations come in. However, for us to recognize the reality of that, we have to fail sometimes before we wake up and say, oh, you know, this is how I've contaminated myself over and over again. I really got to get to work. I really have to work harder. I need to pay attention more, develop the one-pointed mindfulness of what it is to be that pure spiritual nature. So yes.
Lance, just a quick question that kind of like is buzzing in my mind. So wisdom is not necessarily form, because wisdom is not in our brain, mind.
Well, there's knowledge and there's wisdom. You know, there's gradation.
Right.
Of wisdom. You know, so we need to analyze that. We need to look at that. And we'll talk more about that as we go on. But you understand the point? You understand the point?
I do.
And books are written about this stuff.
Yeah.
You know, so we need to understand what is knowledge, you know, and it can be vicarious experience, vicarious knowledge, or it can be experiential knowledge, stuff that I did, that I saw the result, and now it stays with me. I know it. You know, that's what happened. But is it knowledge that is phenomenal? Is it knowledge that seems permanent, but it's actually temporary? You know, so we begin to put all this together. And then a body of wisdom begins to develop out of this, you know, when it mixes with the absolute wisdom, that now we can see the two truths. We see the truth of the phenomenal nature, the relative nature, and we see the truth of this indestructible, permanent nature, of this peaceful nature.
I have a question, and I don't know if you're familiar, but when you said the word forms, and I can't explain it, but Plato has his theory of forms, and I don't know enough about it, but I know of it. But so is there, and I don't know if you're familiar, is there a connection between the forms that you're mentioning and Plato's forms?
Yeah, I believe so. Just recently, we were looking, I was investigating Aristotle, Socrates, and Plato. And yes, much of the wisdom that we're talking about here, much of the knowledge that we're talking about, you know, was simultaneously being discovered, you know, in Greece.
Yeah, but it was the same term, the term forms.
Right.
Yeah.
It's not unique. You know, this is not unique stuff. Other, you know, there are refinements to it because there were traps in Plato's philosophy. There were traps in Socrates and Aristotle. There were traps in there that they couldn't see, you know, but that Buddha Shakyamuni was able to see and that we're able to see. You know, so you can look it up. I mean, you can, you know, investigate that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what I was trying to say, that there's the impermanence of other, the impermanence of the three worlds, of these different things that we see and so on. And the impermanence of this formless realm is our view of it. It's not the stability of its own, but it's our view of it, that we can capture that very subtle thought for a few moments, but then all of a sudden it's gone. And we may not be able to get that back again until we really concentrate, we really focus on that. And then all of a sudden, all those thoughts that were bringing that together come together again. And now it becomes apparent to us again. But so it's the three worlds, it's our perception of the three worlds. The other ones are very easy to see because they're form bodies. They're there all the time. So now we look at the impermanence of oneself. So investigating the impermanence with oneself means that we look at ourselves as being temporary, that we have this temporary life. So here it's talking about meditating on death. So when you go to a funeral, or when you hear about someone passing or something like that, you may think about your own mortality. You may be realizing that, and it gets closer to you. Maybe it's a family member, or maybe a friend, or maybe you're just going to a funeral, you know, and those kinds of thoughts start coming in. You start thinking about that. So this helps us to be able to comprehend, you know, that which we are impermanent. And then the characteristics of death. So if you've ever seen, you know, someone dying, if you've seen pictures of someone dying, or if you work in the medical field or something like that, and you see these things all the time, and you see that there are these conditions, there's this progression of death that happens with us, and with all bodies, with all things, and so on. And we being complex, you know, organisms, you know, all these things begin to happen, and we begin to recognize these things and see these things. So we begin to meditate on that. We contemplate that, and then we allow ourselves to transcend that, and we see that all these physical things that appeared to be permanent, the water, which would be like the blood and the phlegm within our body, you know, it dissolves, or it becomes part of the flesh, becomes part of the body, and the blood just goes away and is absorbed by the flesh. But then the flesh, it begins to burn up. It's all that stuff that is in there, it begins to decompose. There's all these micro things that are within ourselves that begin to consume the body itself until the body just disappears and is giving off heat. We don't see the heat. We can't feel the heat because we're gone. But when we start meditating on this, we begin to connect with this. We connect with the blood, we connect with the water, we connect with the flesh, we connect with the body, we connect with the fire, we connect with the heat of our body being consumed. And then we connect with the movement of this and how things start collapsing, things start falling apart, and so on. There's nothing to hold it all together, and it's all collapsing on itself. And then it becomes invisible. It seems to disappear. It just becomes part of all the rest of phenomenal nature. So these are the characteristics of death. So we begin to contemplate that. And then we meditate on the exhaustion of life in terms of time. That we begin to recognize, okay, I've got these 60, 70, 80 years, whatever it is. Maybe it's 20 years, maybe it's 30 years. But there's this amount of time, there's this period that we have this awareness. And before that, we didn't have this awareness. After it, we didn't have this awareness, but only now. But this awareness is shared by all things. This time element is something that is part of this phenomenal nature. It's relative. And what we come to recognize is that it is all present now. Everything is present now. Everything is present in this place now. Wherever you are right now, everything is present. We make the distinctions, we make the fabrications that this is a distinct place and this is not of that distinct place. But the more that we analyze this, the more we see that it's all the same. It's all part of the same. So this, what seems to be permanent This distinction here we find is impermanent because it melts in, it melds with this that's over here. And we begin to recognize this. So this exhaustion of time, this exhaustion of life, this notion that we have this unique life and that it's not shared by anything else, that is completely unique. But the more that we investigate, the more that we recognize this spiritual body, this spiritual quality, this primal cause that we have, that the more that we see that all that other experience, all that other spirituality is all part of that now, is all part here now. So that's why we say that we become one with all of this, one being a concept, but for lack of a better word, we think of it in those terms, that we become the same as all things. Because there's no distinction. All this is all the essence of this display. The essence of this display. That is the peace. The peace with a capital P is the essence of the display. The display is the lowercase p, the peace of duality, the peace of all this phenomenal nature. But then there's this capital P, peace, that is this absolute nature, that is this spirituality, for lack of a better word. So time evaporates. We recognize that every day we get closer and closer and closer to that reality. As we are living right now, we are in the thick of time. We're in the thick of this phenomenal nature. It's all that we can see and all that we can feel if we're just limited to that, if we haven't been able to transcend that. So that's all we see. It's like being lost in the woods and all we see are trees. But we can't rise above the trees and see, oh, there's this forest and over there is a lake and over there is an ocean and over there is a meadow, and you see all the other things that are happening. When we're in the midst of it, all we see are the trees. All we see is this stuff that seems permanent to us. But every day we're getting closer and closer to that reality of the impermanence. And how prepared are we to be able to recognize that? So then, to understand more about the impermanence of ourselves, we begin to look at what we think ourselves is compounded with in terms of social. You know, there's our family, there's our friends, there's our possessions, there's our physical body, there's our work, there's all these things that we think are all, we identify with all these things, but all these things themselves are temporary. All these things are impermanent. So we meditate on that. So by meditating on death, meditating on the characteristics of death, meditating on the exhaustion of time, and by meditating on the separation of family, friends, possessions, our physical body, all these things, we begin to let go. We begin to say, oh, I see how this is working. I see how this grasping has been working this whole time. It's a process. It doesn't happen right away. It's part of a process. And we need to allow ourselves to hear these teachings, let these teachings kind of rumble around in our head a little bit. And then maybe we do some independent investigation ourselves. We contemplate this. We take some notes. We take some books. We take, information, and we just sit there and we begin to contemplate this. We begin to go through this investigation with this. And we say, yeah, this makes sense. I understand how this works. And we begin to exhaust all these preconceived ideas, just one by one by one by one. But sometimes we have doubts, and sometimes we're holding on, and we have to come back to these things because they're really stubborn, and we don't want to let them go because these are our preconceived ideas, you know. And, you know, I know best. You know, this is one of the things that we hold on to, is that we think we can know everything. So until we start letting go of these things now, we begin to see all these myriad things all interconnected and so on. And then we have these moments of epiphany where we transcend this attachment. We transcend the aversions. We transcend all these connections to this phenomenal nature. And we allow ourselves to liberate from this. And it may only last for just a finger snap, just a moment. But that moment sometimes can seem like, you know, it's a much longer period because time is gone now. Now we see that time is the ever present here. We're ever present. We're spontaneously present right here, and being here is being everywhere. So we begin to put all this together. And it's the spiritual teacher, you see, who is helping to guide us with this, because this stuff is very, very subtle, very, very rare. It's very easy to get lost in our own preconceived habitual tendencies and our own ideas, our emotions. You know, our ego is saying, what are you doing this for? You know, but meanwhile, the ego is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. But the ego is fighting back, saying, what are you doing this for? Why are you doing this? So, if you remember back in the very first session that we had when we talk about the life of the Buddha, and when the Buddha was underneath the tree and he was going to attain enlightenment that evening. And he said, I'm not getting up until I achieve enlightenment. And he goes into the samadhi. And then the demon of ignorance comes up, delusion. And then the demon of anger comes up. The demon of hatred comes up. And the demon of desire comes up. And each one of those he let go, he cut off. And that's what we need to do. That's what this is all about, cutting this off. And then what happened after he severed any attachment, any aversion to any of those demons, which were his demons, then he saw everything. Then he saw nature as it is. He saw the mind as it is. He saw everything in its true nature. And for weeks, he couldn't talk. He couldn't say anything. Nobody would believe what he saw. Nobody could believe his experience. And he kept it within himself. But he was being supplicated by his 5 friends who said, please teach us, you know, what it is. You know, what is this enlightenment? We've been working for this for so long. And he said, I can't tell you what this enlightenment is, but what I can teach you is how I got there. And then you have to experience it for yourself. You have to liberate yourself from all this phenomenal nature, all this stuff that is holding you back, all this quicksand, all this quagmire that keeps pulling us back, all this ocean of suffering that keeps pulling us back, and so on. If you have, as individuals, if you have attained levels of awareness, levels of peace, that's great. That's wonderful. You know, many of you have done that, and we all have done that compared to many other beings on the planet of Earth, because those beings are suffering and terribly. We have a precious human life to be able to recognize these things. So that right away tells us that we've already accomplished some things. But you can't tell me that there's not times when you have suffering in your life, when those things pull you back, when those emotions come over you, when those thoughts of arrogance come over you. So I know that you have those things too. We all have those things. It's part of our human nature. And what we're working to do is to transcend that, to break free of that, to attain level of what we would call then nirvana, to be beyond the suffering. Doesn't mean you can't be pulled back, because nirvana is the other side of samsara. So there is a dualism there, you see. So as long as we're breathing, that's a dualism, right? And as long as we're breathing, we're susceptible to all the other dualism. But if we can focus our minds, if we can use our mind and focus on one-pointed mindfulness and open up our heart center, which is the seat of our spirituality, now that's how we break free. That's how we overcome. That's how we liberate ourselves from the suffering, from this world and so on.
So Lance, does that mean that people that are on oxygen supply, they don't count? I'm just kidding.
I don't understand. What do you mean?
You said that as long as we're breathing, that means dualism. And I was thinking about the people that are on oxygen,
Oh, you mean on
or
respirators?
respirators, yes.
And ventilators and so on? Well,
Yeah.
it's
I didn't think about that until you said it. Then I was like, oh, well, let's go. Hold on a second. When you're in the hospital, I see that all the time. I'm
yeah,
like,
and you've got a choice
wait.
about that. What's your
Yeah.
DNR? What kind of a document do you have? How do you want to die? That's one of the 4 demons we talk about that we have within ourselves, and the demon of controlling our death. Are we in control of our death? Do you want to control that, or do you want to leave it up to the doctors and your family?
Well, yeah, sometimes you have no choice, right? Because if you're in an
Well,
accident and they bring you back to the emergency room, they put you on oxygen respirators, right?
You've got documents, then they won't do that.
I mean, is that just like, I know I'm going, down the rabbit hole with this one, but is that just that a different bardo? Is that a different type of consciousness that you are, in that moment? Or, I mean, I actually, it's like artificial breathing, right?
Well, that's
But,
right.
Yeah.
And
So it is.
It
is breathing.
Are you in some kind of a suspended animation or something like that? Where is your spirit? Where is that life force?
Right.
I can't say, to be absolutely sure. I don't know. Has that life force already ejected itself? I don't know. The technicality of that, I don't know. But without this science, without this ability to do those things, that wouldn't have been possible 100 years ago, would it? So you could, I look at it that this is way that science has begun to overtake our lives, our natural life. We've become more and more unnatural beings in that kind of a situation like that. Do you want that to happen? Do you want that to matter? It's up to you. I'd have to answer the same question for myself. But they say, so to carry the point a little bit further though, go down the hole a little bit more, we have our outer breath, which is our respiration, the lungs breathing and so on. And the brain is telling the muscles in the diaphragm to move up and down, to force the air to come in and go out, and the brain is telling the heart to continue beating and so on like that. So all that is still happening, and our outer breath is still working. But there's this point where the outer breath stops. The brain has stopped, the lungs have stopped, the heart has stopped, whatever those combination of conditions that have brought together for the physical body to stop functioning. Death comes. But yet there is this inner breath. There's within us the same inner breath that we, when we were conceived, came. That here was the spirit, for lack of better words, here comes the spirit, and here comes the egg of the mother, and here comes the sperm of the father, and these three things intersect together. And that life force stays with us our entire life. And there is a breath to that, for lack of a better word. And when we die, when the body dies, that life force, just as it came in, has to be ejected. And we have control of that. Or we don't have control. We surrender the control of that. And we want that to be controlled to go up through the center channel that runs through the center of our body, parallel to our spine, and ejects through the crown of our head, and to the true nature, to the Buddha, what we call the Buddha. So this is called the transference of consciousness. So we prepare.
That's the POA practice, right?
That's the POA practice. So we prepare ourselves for that.
And that's the Bendo that ejects through the center channel, right?
The Tigle.
Tigle, right?
Or the Nadi. Yeah. So, so being able to recognize that here, this phenomenal nature, this physical body is impermanent, it goes, but yet there is this, for lack of a better word, this spiritual life force that remains, that has never died, has never been born, has never died. It is omnipresent. And we all share that. And this is the spirituality that we talk about. And in this way, we say that we're transpersonal, because this is where we say, oh, I had a life, in 1500, AD, I had this life as a carpenter or whatever it was, because we all share that same life force. We all have that within ourselves. And we can through our meditation, we can experience that in our meditation. And then we can bring that experience back with us. We can bring those realizations back with us and so on. And they become liberating. And likewise, we can look into the future. Where do you want to be in the future? Do you want to be a carpenter in the future, or would you like to be a Buddha? Well, depending on what you do now will determine what you're going to do in the future. You do good deeds, you're going to have a good rebirth. Whether you're going to be a Buddha or a Bodhisattva or whatever kind of a vocation you're going to have, or whatever kind of a family you're going to have, is all dependent upon things that you're doing right now. You're the architect of your next life.
Lance.
Yes.
So how does relate bodhicitta to the realization and transfer of the Tigle? I don't know if my question is very clear. I don't have it clear in my head, but
well, wait a minute. What is the
it's-
definition? What is the definition of bodhicitta? We've done this many, many times. What's the definition of bodhicitta?
So
Can anybody help? Anybody know? Tom?
Is to aspire,
yeah, the aspiration.
aspire to enlighten and to help others enlighten.
Well, that's a function. That's the activity of bodhicitta.
Is
What
it,
are
is
the-
it Is it supposed to be like the people who are on the path with you? Is that really off?
What is the essence? What is the definition of bodhicitta? That's the question. Because if you know the answer to that, it then helps you everything else. That's why getting to know these definitions is very important.
Is the aspiration for enlightenment?
That's an activity of bodhicitta. What are the 4 characteristics of bodhicitta?
Loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity.
Correct. So what that represents, those are the characteristics of bodhicitta. Who has those characteristics? Where are those characteristics found?
A mother.
Buddhas, all the Buddhas.
Everybody.
What were you going to say, Zara?
Well, that's what I was saying. The collective group of people who are, I guess, on the path or on
Right.
the journey with you.
Right. So we have it within ourselves too, but we don't recognize it. They are the embodiment of it. With us, it's covered up. The definition of bodhicitta is, bodhi means enlightenment. Citta means the heart mind. It's the enlightened heart mind. So, I've used many times, the example of the diamond. That here is this diamond, and this diamond is made up of bodhicitta. That's what it's made of. Loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. It's the holy enlightened mind. And the activities are the different aspects. That's the aspirations and the actions and the practices are these aspects of that diamond. The way in which that bodhicitta is being actualized, is being released, is being displayed. So we recognize that through the deities, the deity yoga, and so on, the practices that we do.
So it's basically the same,
What's the same?
right? So what I was asking is about bodhicitta with the realization of the tigla, right? Because at the time that you're realizing that, basically, that's the awareness of your.
Why are you
bodhicitta.
realizing it as a human being, or are you embodying it as an enlightened being?
Well, I guess at the time you're realizing you're.
Yeah, but they don't have a brain. You're dead.
Yeah, I mean, but for the people that are realizing in this lifetime, in one lifetime, I guess they can be.
So they're on the path. So they're on the path. They're bodhisattva on the path.
Right, right. So I guess they're still in human condition,
Right.
when they're realizing it.
So we're a work in progress.
Or I guess you can realize it in the bardo, right?
Yes. And you realize it in the bardo, but to realize it in the bardo means that you have great accumulation of merit and wisdom to be able to get you to that point, to be able to recognize it, because there you're just a pure spiritual body. And are you pure enough? Are you a proper vessel to be able to recognize and abide in that freedom? Why is it you were born? Why were you born? Why didn't, why do you think you were born?
I don't know if it's my connection or everybody's connection, but
I can hear Lance fine. I think it's your connection.
Oh, you talking? I thought you were talking about a spiritual connection. I'm sorry. You're talking about a connection.
Adrian, can you hear me?
Everybody's pretty choppy, so I think it's my connection.
Are you on
Sorry about
Wi-Fi
that.
or are you Are you on Wi-Fi or you've got Ethernet?
Yeah, I'm on Wi-Fi.
Yeah, you try and find a way to connect yourself up with Ethernet.
Or just get on your cell.
Well, I wanted to make the point. I was asking you the question. I was asking the question is, where were you before you were born? Why were you born? And what will happen when you die? And how will you be born again? You know, this is the Bardo. This is what the Bardo Total is all about. You know, this is what the natural liberation by hearing in the intermediate state is all about. And this is what all this, everything that we're learning, is all part of the path to be able to employ the teachings of the Bardo Total so that when we die, we don't even recognize we died. We are already in Buddha nature. There is nothing blocking this. We are the total expression of this. We are total bodhicitta. The holy enlightened mind is my only mind. And when I give up my body, I won't even miss it. I won't even recognize it. I'll say, oh, look at that. That looks familiar. If I could look and see if that were true, you know, but I'm being figurative about it. But then we become released into that which we call Buddha nature. Or you might want to call it Christ, or you might want to call it God, or you might want to call it Krishna. There's many different names depending on the different culture and so on. But the essence is the same. So we've all been there before because that's where we came from, you know. You know, what we're seeing now is one side of reality. There's this other side of reality that is, you know, in pure spirit. Where did that spirit that came and combined with the egg and the sperm, where did that spirit come from? You know? And what force did it have? Why do you have a life force like you have? I have one that I have, and then other people have a life force that they have. There are some people who have a life force that millions of people know them. And there are people that millions of people know, and some people are very, very virtuous. Many people know them, and they know them for their virtue, and they love them. And other people have a great life force, and they have absolutely no virtue at all. But millions of people follow them. How is that? And where do we fall in that? You know, what is our life force? What is our, you know, we talk about, we have this circle of influence or whatever, you know, in our family and our friends, our world. How many people do we connect with? Do we touch and so on like that?
Isn't that our karmic imprints?
As part of the karma, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So
Um,
so that's the point. You see, if we're bound by our karma, then that forces us to take a body. That forces us to be born again. If we've released our karma, then we can be free. We can remain in the bardo of reality, free from all this attachment, all this aversion, all this hatred, all this confusion, all this physical stuff.
No.
We could say it's in another dimension if you want.
Now, isn't this already a perfect state that we're in? And that the only reason that we don't see things as they are is because of our obscurations, because I mean, this dream state that we're living in, that we don't realize that this is a dream, thinking that this is reality.
Correct. And you weren't here with us, but I made the point, but maybe this is a good illustration of the point. When we were talking about this earlier, And I was saying the impermanence of intersentient beings, the impermanence of others, and the three worlds. It's our view of the three worlds. We talked about the desire world, we talked about the form world, and the formless world. And do we recognize it as that? That's what Tom is saying. We can be in the desire world as we are now, and we can be liberated. There are Buddhas among us, Bodhisattvas among us. So for us to be able to attain that means that we have to purify all the things that we're holding on to, all the things that we have aversions to, all this attachment to this life. Remember, that's what this chapter is about, impermanence, the antidote to the attachment of this life, realizing that all this is temporary and I need to let it go. I don't, if I hold on to it, I'm holding on to nothingness. I'm holding on to emptiness. What's that going to get me? So we're liberating, we're working to liberate ourselves. So that brings us to the last point here. It says the beneficial 5 effects of meditation on impermanence. The beneficial 5 effects of meditation. Number 1, it leads one to release attachment to this life. If we see that it's all impermanent, if we see it's all temporary, why am I attaching to it? It nourishes our faith of the spirituality. Remember the 3 faiths? We had the yearning faith, the trusting faith, and the clear faith. Well, those 3 should be coming together now. We should be getting more and more clear faith that this is the right thing to be doing. This is to be a precious human being. This is to have a precious human life. This is the most noble, this is the greatest achievement that a human being can make. That the benefit of this supports our perseverance. That we say, oh, it's taken me this long. Look, we've been talking for 2 years now, being perseverance, coming together with these meetings and talking about these things. And we've gotten to these points, does it demonstrate that I've made some progress? Yes. Does it also demonstrate that I haven't made some progress that maybe I should have? Yes. And that's why we keep going round and round and going over these things and going over these things. And finally, the synapses begin to close. The heart begins to open. Things start to change. What's the biggest difference? Is it hearing it? Have you not heard it in the right ways? Or have you not practiced it? Have you not become these things? Have you not practiced being a bodhicitta or being a bodhisattva? How much time did you spend practicing? It just doesn't fall out of the sky. Just because I open a book and read it, just because I hear it from a teacher, doesn't make it so. I have to become the embodiment of it. I have to practice it over and over and over again. When you do your work, any one of us do our work, we started out as some kind of a neophyte who came from school of some type where we learned the skills of what our job was, but then we had to practice that job. And maybe it took us a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 3 years, whatever it was, until we became proficient enough that we became productive and we wouldn't hurt ourselves, we wouldn't hurt other people, and we could teach other people how to do it because we practiced it. But if I just made it let it be vicarious experience of receiving the teaching from the teacher and reading out of the book. I don't want you operating on me. I don't want you defending me in a court of law, or whatever vocation you can imagine what it takes to practice, the medical practice, the law practice, the practice of being a carpenter, whatever it is. Now we're talking about a spiritual practice. How much bodhicitta, how obvious is your bodhicitta? How much of your time, how much of your effort, how much of your diligence is spent in being the embodiment of bodhicitta, the holy enlightened mind? So that's how it supports perseverance and permanence. If we don't do this, the good news is you get another life. The bad news is you get another life. So the fourth benefit is that it quickly frees one from attachment and fear. That we recognize that attachments, desire, and fear, aggression, hatred is all contrived. We make all this up. It's all a way of our ego of being able to cope within this life that we've created for ourselves.
And Lance, can you elaborate a little bit on attachment? It's not necessarily just to non-virtuous stuff, but it's pretty much to everything.
Correct. Yeah. Exactly that. We attach to everything. We attach to being a good person. We attach to the idea of being a bodhisattva. We attach to the idea of being a Buddha. And it's that very attachment that keeps us from being the bodhisattva and keeps us from being the Buddha. Because we develop, arrogance about it. Oh, if I'm the bodhisattva, I'm better. Humility, to be able to look at our humility and be able to say, where is my humility? Where is that? And be able to meditate on that, to be able to get yourself to a point beyond contemplation on that, and to be able to look at it with fresh eyes, so to speak. Where is my humility? The sun has no sense of itself. The Buddha has no sense of itself. The Buddha doesn't need a self. The sun doesn't need a self. We need a self. We want a self. We desire a self. We attach to that self. I don't want to be that self. I don't want to be that. I don't want to be like him. No. I don't want to do that. So we start developing all these emotions. Oh, I'm getting more like him. Oh, no. I can't do that. So the only way to be able to get, to not be caught up in these trees of the woods and not be able to see the forest is by transcending, is by raising ourselves, raising our mindfulness into one-pointed mindfulness of pure virtue, of bodhicitta, the holy enlightened mind, which has the hallmarks of loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity. How do we do it? Through the Eightfold Path. Right view, right conduct, right view, right resolve, right speech, right conduct, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration. Why do we memorize this? I'm trying to be the embodiment of this. I know how much I weigh. I know what my height is. I know the color of my hair. I know all these attributes about my physicality. I know the talents. I know the things that I can do with my intellect. I know all these things. Why don't I know my spirituality? So then the fifth one of the beneficial effects is it becomes a cause for the realization of the equal nature of all phenomena. I'll say it again. It becomes a cause. Impermanence becomes a cause for the realization of the equal nature of all phenomena. That we see all nature as the same. The metal that is here is the same atoms as in my hand. Same as this table, same as the tree out there. It's all the same. It's all made up of the same stuff. It's matter and energy. So we see all this phenomena. What is it that allows us to see it? Is our spirituality. Is something that permeates all this other stuff, all this what we call matter, what we call energy, is permeated by what we call spirituality. And now the physicists are coming to grips with that. I don't know if you read that or you watched that video I sent you a couple of weeks ago about David Bohm, but that's the realization he had. He was a great physicist. He was admired by Albert Einstein. He was taken under the wing of Robert Oppenheimer and had a great future as a physicist, but he came up with this far out idea that there is something beyond physics. We need a new science that goes beyond physics, that incorporates, and then he found that what it incorporates is the physical. When he met Krishnamurti, then he said, what you're looking for, we've been talking about for thousands of years in India, and it's spirituality. That's what you're looking for. So all this is liberation. When you know that and you become the embodiment of that, there's nothing to hold on to anymore. I can be free. I can be joyous. See how happy you are. See what your joyous quotient is in your life. You know, having loving kindness and compassion, you know, is certainly very important, you know, but maybe one of the things that is a hallmark is how joyous are you in the face of adversity? You know, in the past 6 months, we've all been stuck in our homes and having to make all these choices that we've had to make, you know, because of this pestilence that we had and everything. But in spite of that, how joyous have we been? Have we been miserable? Or do we find some joy in this? Do we find a way to be joyous about it? And how much judgment, how much prejudice do I have regarding all people's different positions on all this? Am I looking at this with equanimity? The sense of balance, the sense of sameness. So these are the beneficial 5 effects. This one here is the equal nature of all phenomena. Seeing all this is the same. That's equanimity, the 4th quality of the vast, immeasurable quality of bodhicitta. So what we really need to be doing is spending weekends being in a place where we can practice together and make a commitment to do that. That's when you'll see a big change come. If you haven't done it before, you'll see a change come when you do that. Do that for a few weekends. that we come together, 8 o'clock in the morning, and we do particular practice. Say, for instance, we do Shen Reizig practice, and we do Shen Reizig practice at 8 o'clock. We do it for 2 hours or so. We take a break. We come back. We do another session from 10 o'clock to 12 o'clock. We take another break. We have lunch. Then we come back at 1:30 or whatever, and we do another session of Shen Reizig. And then we take a break at 3:30 or whatever, and then we come back and we do another session, number 4, of Shen Reizig until the dinner time at 5 o'clock or 5:30. Then we take a break for dinner. We come back, and at 6:30, 7 o'clock, we do our next session, our 6th session of Shen Reizig. That's Saturday. And then Sunday, we do the same thing. You start seeing some changes happen when you start doing that concentrated practice. You're doing it together with people. Normally we would do it, in a place together. We would all stay together in a Dharma center or something like that. But right now that's impossible. But it doesn't mean that we can't get benefit by committing ourselves to doing this in our homes and working with our families and saying, I'm going to do this and I need to be allowed to be able to do this. Please don't interrupt me. And we go into this Zoom retreat of practice. So I hope all that makes some sense to you. When you select a teacher, you want somebody who's been there and come back. Once, twice, 3 times. Somebody who's just not talking out of a book. I have limited experience, but enough experience to be able to say to you that this is what we need to do. Okay, so please ask some questions, make some comments.
Now, Lance, I've been reading and contemplating on, there is no suffering, there is no cause of suffering, there is no ending of suffering.
No, only what we make.
Exactly.
Only what we create. We are the creator. We are the architect. And then we become the engineer.
Say that again, Tom.
He's always tweaking it.
There is no suffering, there is no cause of suffering, there is no ending of suffering.
The Heart Sutra. The Heart Sutra. Teata Om Gate Gate Paragate Parasam Gate. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. No questions? No comments? Am I putting you on the spot? Do you feel like I'm putting you on the spot? Zara?
No, not for me. You're not. I'm very comfortable with any questions I may have.
Okay. Do you think you would want to engage in a weekend practice?
I would love that. I was just going to email privately, but I would definitely love to get the details and logistics and make a commitment to join you guys. I think that sounds nice. As a next step for me personally, I think that would be a gradual next step for my journey.
Great. All right. Tom, how about you?
Well, Lance, you always know I'm in.
Okay. All right. William and Bonnie, how about you guys? Would you be willing to commit to a weekend refuge practice? Not a refuge practice, but a yoga practice?
You're talking about being able to do it on Zoom right now? or
We
waiting
would
till
do it on Zoom, not now, this minute, but maybe in a month or something like that, we would do
yeah,
it.
that would be wonderful.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. Martin, how about you? Do you think you'd be up for something like that?
Schedule permitting, I have 2 teenagers. So, so dealing with them sometimes takes, during the day. So certainly something I would attempt to do, but I can't commit at this point.
Okay. All right. Fair enough, but do you understand the point that we're trying to
Oh,
make?
for sure. Yeah.
Adrian, how about you, Adrian?
Yeah, I'm in.
Yeah? Okay. Is there a time, can we say maybe sometime in September when it gets a little cooler and, would that work?
Yeah, that would be fine for me if we wanted to do a delay from these teachings or whatever works for everyone else.
Yeah, we make a special weekend and, call this out and, okay, good. Well, we'll do that.
When I started getting into Buddhism, I did I think a 7-day retreat like that.
Okay.
So
Well, that's very aggressive. That's pretty good, especially.
it was. I was like, why did I get into this?
Well, you're a courageous guy. That we all know.
Did you say 7 days? Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's hardcore.
It was. I was like,
That's when he thought he could start climbing trees after that. All right. All right. Well, I'm in. I think it'd be great. I think it'd be terrific. This is something I've been wanting to do for a long time, and waiting for people that want to do it. And we'll see. So if you want to join on the 201 sessions that we have to get a flavor of the deity yoga practices, would be good. But it's going to entail, an hour and a half of chanting nonstop, and it takes a great deal of effort and mindfulness. But at the end, you will there'll be a great feeling of accomplishment and maybe some breakthrough of awareness, and will be very, very good. Okay. Anybody else got a comment? We'll do dedication. All right, Adrian, you want to do the dedication? And Adrian, can you work on getting a Ethernet connection?
yes, sir. I'll do better on that.
It'll make it.
I just have to. I don't have a cable in this room, but I can work on that. I can probably get an Ethernet cable through the wall, fish it, and yeah.
Well, I got one that runs along the floor that goes down the steps and everything that I got here in my house. I got a 50-foot cable to give me Ethernet up here in my room. And
Yeah.
We put a 25-foot cable through the wall.
Okay.
Just drilled the hole straight through.
It made a huge difference.
Come on over and drill my hole. All right, well, good. Well, to make a big difference, because that's the problem you're having with, breakup and so on. Is
Yeah.
On the
Yeah.
Wi-Fi.
I'm the one missing
Can I
out.
ask you to do it a little bit slower? It's very hard to follow so fast.
Yeah, people in Georgia talk fast. Kidding.
You're also a lot younger. It makes a big difference.
Yeah.
Well, look at it this way. You want to do it heartfelt, that your heart can keep up with your voice.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Are we doing the dedication in Tibetan as well, Lance, or?
No, just the English.
Okay. So page 157.
If you're in the big prayer book, or page 18 in the little prayer book.
Yes. Dorjachang, Tilopa,
Tilopa,
Naropam,
Naropam,
Marpam,
Marpa, Milarepa,
Ilarepa,
Popa.
Dharma Lorukam Popa, Pagmodrupa, Lordrang Pupa. Please bestow upon us the most auspicious blessings of all Kagyu Lamas. By this virtue, you may achieve omniscience, by defeating all enemies, confusion. May all who travel on the waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death cross the ocean of samsara. Bodhicitta, the excellent and precious mind, whereas unborn, may it arise, where is born, may it not decline, but ever increase, higher and higher. I pray that the Lama may have good health. I pray that the Lama may have long life. I pray that your Dharma activities spread far and wide. I pray that I may not be separated from you. As Manjushri, the warrior, realized the ultimate state, and as did Samantabhadra, I will follow in their path and fully dedicate all the merit for all sentient beings. By the blessings of the Buddha who attained the three kayas, by the blessings of the truth, of the unchanging Dharma as such, by the blessing of the indivisible Sangha order, may the merit I share bear fruit. By the virtues collected in the three times, by myself and all beings in samsara and nirvana, and by the innate root of virtue, may I and all sentient beings quickly attain unsurpassed, perfect, complete, precious enlightenment. May the teachings of the great Drikungpa Ratnashri, who is omniscient, Lord of the Dharma, Master of interdependence, continue and increase through study, practice, contemplation, and meditation until the end of samsara. Sarvamangalam. For this realm encircled by snow-covered mountains, you are the source of every benefit and bliss without exception. Tenzin Gyatso, you who are one with Avalokiteshvara, may you remain steadfast until samsara's end. Embodiment of the three precious jewel, Padmapani, who holds the teachings of the victorious one, seeing all the goodness meaning with the wisdom eye, may you who are spontaneously established activities live long for hundreds of kalpas. Noble Manjushri, the Lord of Speech, who manifests to hold the teachings of the triple gem, who arises the lamp of the sage's teaching, may you who are the light of the Dharma live long for hundreds of kalpas. The one known in the Holy Land as Aryadeva emanated into Gar clan of Eastern Tibet as Chodingpa, the hard son of Jigten Sumgun. May the life of Glorious Garchan remain steadfast for 100 eons. In this age of strife, when the victor's teaching faces hardship, through his powerful Vajra-like conduct, he takes on himself the heavy responsibility of the unbiased teaching. May Garchan, the son of teachings, live long. Om Hong. Om Hong. Om Hong. May the body, speech, and mind of the enlightened ones become one with my own body, speech, and mind. Om Hong.
Very good. Thank you all very much. Tomorrow at 10 o'clock, we can do Shakyamuni practice if you like. Is anybody going to join? Tom?
I might.
I'll be there.
Okay.
That's my favorite practice.
Lance, what are you doing in the morning?
At 10 o'clock, we're going to do a puja, a morning puja with Buddha Shakyamuni. We do a practice with Buddha Shakyamuni with white Zambala and with Achichoki Droma. So,
Okay. Can you translate that into like a lay description?
do you have this book?
Can you put it closer to the monitor? No, I don't have that. No.
Do you have the virtual copy of it? You didn't download it?
No, I have it. Anything you guys have sent, I have it in my Google inbox. I have it.
Okay.
Anything.
Well, Buddha Shakyamuni is the historical Buddha. So we do a special practice on every day, really, to honor Buddha Shakyamuni, the historical Buddha. And then we do the Dharma protector, White Zambala, who is the protector who brings health and prosperity. So we do that practice. And then after that, then we do Achi Choki Joma. Achi Choki Joma is a Dharma protector of the Drikon Kagyu lineage, and she clears away all obstacles so that all our wishes, our virtuous wishes come true, and brings us power and brings us happiness and so on through clearing away those obstacles. So these are 3 practices that we do every day in the shrine room at Dharma Surya. So on Sunday, we make a point of doing them here on Zoom for everybody to be able to kind of, be mindful of these practices.
Have you already sent out a link, or is there a place to register through your website for that?
The link is the same link as we use for Medicine Buddha. I already sent it out. It's on the same email as the one you got with this.
Okay. All
So
right.
there's a link for the Sunday thing.
Okay.
If
And-
you don't have it, let me know.
And if you're like, if I come, if I'm able to, I think I could join tomorrow. Is there an expectation of, is it just more of a passive practice where someone is leading? Like for example, you, like how much involvement or prior knowledge of what's going on would you need?
Well, we recite this book and we all do it together.
Yeah. Okay. So I just need to have that available and then chant with everybody else in unison.
Correct.
Okay.
So we usually spend an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours going over it.
Okay. Gotcha.
But I think Tom will tell you it's an excellent practice and very inspirational and stabilizing and all the good things.
Okay.
All you'll love is Zara.
Okay. All right.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds awesome.
All right. So if you want me to send you one of these books, I'll be glad to.
Adrian, do you have another copy of that laying around? Do you have duplicates of that book?
I do.
Of course you do.
Well, Lance, let me send 01. Because the one that you send me, that I got to you now. So
Okay.
There you
Well,
go.
All right. Very good. Thank you all very much.
well, there you go.
All worked out. Thank you, guys.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. And I'll look forward to seeing some of you guys tomorrow and next week, if not tomorrow. Thank you, Martin. I'll see you all soon. And
Thanks.
Martin,
Good night.
you
Bye.
were down in Virginia, right? Where are you? You're right near Fairfax, aren't you?
Me?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm close.
Where do you live?
Chantilly?
Oh, you're in Chantilly.
Yeah, but it's still pretty close. That's kind of how I found.
Because
To begin with.
Michael lives in Chantilly too.
Uh-huh.
He's on vacation right now, but he lives there. And Tom lives in Alexandria.
Okay.
So maybe there's a possibility if you wanted to do the weekend thing, if you can get out of the house for the weekend and wanted to join us, there are ways to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
night,
Good night.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you so much, Lance. That was wonderful.
Thank you very much.